This is the second video to introduce the tissues of the human body. In this video, I'm going to talk about specialized connective tissue, muscle, and nerve tissue. Remember that tissues are similar cells with a common function. In the human body, we have 4 tissue types: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Epithelial and connective tissue proper was discussed in part 1 of this video, and today we'll talk about specialized connective tissue, muscle, and nerve tissue. There are 3 tissues that are part of the specialized connective tissue: cartilage, bone, and blood. Remember that any connective tissue, what distinguishes it is that there's a large extracellular matrix made up of protein fibers in some type of ground tissue. And the things that distinguish the specialized connective tissue from connective tissue proper is how that extracellular matrix is composed. Cartilage is made primarily of collagen. The collagenous fibers that are produced for cartilage are made by cells called chondrocytes, which is a comparison to fibroblasts, which is the type of cell that makes collagen for connective tissue proper. The ground substance in cartilage is more gel-like, and the 2 components of cartilage work together to reduce friction in joints, and it also provides protection and support to certain body structures. Before you are born, your bones are actually made of cartilage, and that cartilage serves as a matrix, a framework for bones then to develop as you age in early infancy. Cartilage has a poor blood supply, so any injury to cartilage is going to take a long time to heal. And there are 3 specific types of cartilage: hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. Hyaline cartilage is the most abundant type of cartilage in the mature body. The cartilage is made of very fine collagenous fibers, and the chondrocytes exist in little cavities called lacunae. So if you look at this slide of hyaline cartilage, you can see sort of these little chambers with a cell inside of it. So the chamber is a lacunae, the cell itself is a chondrocyte. Hyaline cartilage is found at the ends of bones. You might have noticed it in chicken, especially if you see that raw chicken drumstick before it is cooked. It looks like white glass. Hyaline cartilage is also giving support to the end of your nose along your respiratory passages, and as I said, helping form that skeleton before birth. Elastic cartilage contains primarily elastin fibers produced by their specialized chondrocytes, and they make up the cartilage found in the external ear and part of the larynx. The fact that your ear is made of elastic cartilage is why it can be, you can sleep on your ear having crunched it over sideways and things don't break. It springs back into place. You can see the elastic fibers in this microscope slide, making the space in between the chondrocytes and their lacunae look a little different than what we saw in the previous slide with the hyaline cartilage. Our last type of cartilage is fibrocartilage, and this is a very tough shock absorber kind of cartilage made primarily of collagen, and collagen that does go pretty much in parallel lines. It is the cartilage that is found between the bones of your spinal cord, the intervertebral discs. It also makes up the meniscus in joints, which are shock-absorbing pads in your joints, and between the 2 bones found in your pelvis, where it joins in the front, the pubic symphysis. The second type of specialized connective tissue is bone, and bone is a solid matrix of protein and minerals which support the body, protect our internal organs, and provide a place for muscles to attach. If the muscles didn't have something to pull against, we would not be able to move. Bone starts with collagenous fibers, so collagen provides the framework, and then mineral salts are deposited in between them to create this very hard extracellular matrix. The cells that are involved in producing bone are called osteocytes, and again, they're found in lacunae, so they're found in their own little chamber, and they are responsible for maintaining the bone structure. On this slide, the little dark spots that we see are your osteocytes, and you can also see that they're creating these larger structures that are sort of circular. These are called osteons, and we'll talk about them a little bit more when we get to the skeletal system. In the center of these circular structures is where you would find blood vessels and nerves, because even though bone appears to be something like a rock, it is actually living tissue. The final type of specialized connective tissue is blood, and blood has red blood cells and white blood cells and platelets all being carried by plasma. So the extracellular matrix is plasma, which is a very watery substance. It's primarily made of water with certain proteins dissolved in it, the most important ones being albumin, globulin, and fibrinogen, which becomes important in blood clotting, various electrolytes, ions that can carry electricity, nutrients, and of course hormones, since the bloodstream is how hormones get around the body. Along with blood's role in transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide, it is also important for maintaining homeostasis in body temperature and pH and several other important areas. And the fibrinogen mentioned up above provides the protein fibers that allows us to form blood clots working in conjunction with platelets. Now we're moving on to the third type of tissue in the human body, muscle tissue. Muscle cells are the only kind of cells that can contract, and their contraction causes your movement in your body and within the body, and also the gross body movements of the whole body itself. Muscle cells sometimes are also called muscle fibers, which can confuse things because there are protein fibers inside muscle cells that do the contracting. We have three types of muscle tissue in the body: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. Skeletal muscle, as the name suggests, is the muscle that is attached to the bones of your skeleton. It's attached there by tendons, a type of dense connective tissue, and you are able to voluntarily control your skeletal muscle. You can decide when it contracts and when it relaxes, but that doesn't mean that every skeletal muscle is only controlled by your conscious choice. Many of your muscles are held in a state of slight contraction, a tonicity, because it's being controlled automatically by your brain. That's what allows you to stand up and sit upright. You don't have to think about those postural muscles. Those are handled by unconscious control. The cells of skeletal muscle are striated under the microscope. They look striped. They are also multinucleated. They have more than one nucleus in a mature cell because the cells themselves need a lot of protein fibers to be manufactured in order to have the contraction happen. And of course, your DNA nucleus, the DNA in your nucleus, contains the directions for making that protein. Contraction only happens in one direction. So that if we're looking here at our cell, this is just a picture of a cell. We have an actual slide diagram over here. But your contraction would always happen in the same direction. The whole cell will shorten from its long lengthwise direction. And so as the individual cells shorten, the whole muscle will shorten. The second type of muscle tissue is smooth muscle tissue. This is the type of muscle that's found in the walls of various organs, the organs of your digestive system, your blood vessels, the bronchial tubes. These cells do not have stripes. They're non-striated under the microscope. They have a spindle shape, which basically means they're an oval with a point on the end. And you can see how that allows them to nestle into each other. And each cell has a single nucleus, no multinucleated cells here. Contraction can happen in multiple directions within the cell. So the cell can contract lengthwise, but it also can contract crosswise and maybe on a diagonal. And this allows the organ as a whole that is made up of smooth muscle to be able to squeeze together. And this is very important for moving things through your digestive system or through your blood vessels. Your smooth muscle is under involuntary control. Your autonomic nervous system takes care of it without your brain having to consciously make a decision, which really is nice. Imagine if you had to think about how to digest your meals. And finally, we have cardiac muscle, which is only found in the heart muscle wall. These cells are striated like skeletal muscle, but they are interconnected to a greater degree. The cells themselves are kind of branched, only one nucleus, and you can see the structure here in the drawing maybe a little bit more easily on how they branch out than you can in the actual slide to the left. The cardiac cells are under involuntary control. In fact, they don't need the brain at all. The cells of your heart will contract without any kind of neural input. They also contract together. So if you have a single cardiac cell and put it next to another one in a petri dish, if they touch, they will start working together. And that allows your heart to have a natural pacemaker that can maintain a certain heart rate, and your brain will increase or decrease that depending upon your body's needs. Finally, we come to nervous tissue, the last type of tissue in the human body. It is found in your brain, your spinal cord, and your peripheral nerves, the nerves in the body. And nervous tissue is made up of two kinds of cells. You have the neurons, which are the cells that are actually in charge of transmitting those electrical chemical signals that we call a nerve impulse. And that is an example of that is this big cell you can see in the slide. And then you have the neuroglial or the neuroglial cells that support these neurons. And there's several of these types of cells. They can be involved in making the nerve impulse happen faster down the axon, the long branching part of your neuron. The neuroglial cells can supply nutrients. They provide protection and actually create what is known as the blood-brain barrier that keeps very many substances from moving out of the blood into the brain to try to protect the brain cells, and also just kind of hold everything together. So this covers the 4 types of tissues in the human body. For this particular video, check your understanding. Can you describe the functions of the specialized connective tissue, the muscle tissue, and nervous tissue? Can you provide some differences in the extracellular matrices between cartilage, bone, and blood? Can you talk about the differences between our 3 types of muscle tissue? And can you identify the function of these 2 types of nervous tissue? Once again, if you're still feeling confused, go back and watch that part of the video to prepare yourself for class.